Good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome to SEDA's Winter Event 2022. We are delighted to welcome you here today to explore all things post-pandemic learning and teaching. How well are we doing? So we have a really exciting lineup this morning. We have our expert panel with Professor Colin and Professor Susannah Quinsee, who will take us through our first session this morning. We have our keynote then at 1 o'clock with Justin Reich, and then in the afternoon we have a fantastic panel of teachers and students who are really going to explore how best to make it all work.
Thank you, Mary. So morning, everyone, and I'm really pleased to be chairing the expert panel for us this morning. So we have two fabulous speakers. We've first of all got Professor Susannah Quinsee, who is Vice President Digital and Student Experience at London City University. And as Vice President, she leads on lots of institutional projects and strategy to support education and our students, but has a particular focus on digital transformation as well. And Susannah's going to speak about being, I am an educational developer, get me out of here. What is the role of education development in the post-pandemic university? And then we are going to also have Professor Colin, who is from Sheffield, Hallam University, and is an exciting, innovative speaker on education and human capacity to learn, and is regarded as one of the few individuals recognised internationally for his extensive capabilities in understanding the depth of theory, alongside his ability to imply impactful, practical, experiential learning designs. And I'm sure that's going to be an interesting session too. And that's entitled No Time to Design. Design starts at the drawing board and then moves into the classroom. So I'm looking forward to hearing both these speakers, and there'll obviously be an opportunity then for people to ask questions once the two speakers have done their bit. So I'll hand over to Professor Susannah Quinsee first.
Thank you very much, Pam, for that introduction, and it is really lovely to be here this morning. Right, I'm going to share my screen, which is easier said than sometimes done. So let's do that first of all. Great. Well, thank you. It's really lovely to be here this morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to take part in this opening session. And as Pam said, my role at City is Vice President Digital and Student Experience, which is a new role. I've been in this role since around January this year. And one of the things that I was thinking about when I was preparing for this session was just how much I now value educational development. I always have. My background is in educational development and educational technology, but certainly now I'm on the senior leadership team, I just feel constantly what an important role educational developers have, but equally how stressful sometimes it can feel at the moment, and how particularly post-pandemic it feels like some of the good things that happened over the last few years, not to say there weren't a lot of challenging things, but some of the really good things that we learned, and that some of those moments where as educational developers we thought, yes, finally people get our value, sometimes seem to feel a bit thrown out of the window. So I wanted to take a bit of time this morning to reflect on that, reflect on where we are, and also think about what we can do to make things better, and to really grow into our roles as educational developers at the heart of the university. And apologies for the slightly lowbrow, but I won't try and mention Matt Hancock very much, but I did think that actually the university does feel a bit like a jungle at the moment. One thing that I just wanted to say as well is that one of the things that I was very excited about being here this morning is because I was invited to be on the SEDA keynote 11 years ago. And 11 years ago, I was sitting in my room in my house in Islington, and the keynote was happening online, and I was there we go. And I was at home because I was very pregnant with twins. Those are the little scan pictures, and we recorded the presentation, and then it was played while I was sitting at home. I don't think we even brought me in for the questions, actually. And it's so interesting reflecting back to that, given that now I'm also sitting in Islington and everyone is all over the country. And at the time then it felt so edgy and also slightly weird. I knew that you were all doing my keynote when I wasn't there. And I do remember talking to Pam quite a lot about scratching our heads about how we were going to make it work. But we did. So think how much we've changed in 11 years. And that was all about Aesop's fables. That was happening then. So yeah, I can't quite believe that's 11 years ago. Anyway, so here we are now, 11 years on, and how are we coping post-pandemic? I think it's a bit of a jungle out there, I have to say. I think that it can feel, all of us have gone through a huge experience over the last 2 years. It's been incredibly turbulent. There's been moments of real stress, moments of amazing joy, some real hardships, and just everything, changing for us all, some moments of incredible boredom, and then feeling at the extremes of kind of chaos and stress. It's been an absolute roller coaster of an experience. And as I often say, particularly having been at home during the pandemic with 4 children, completely lost any sense of how to behave in any social situation when I came back into the world of work. And I think all of us are struggling with that to a greater or lesser degree. And it's like that within the universities. We're a bit of a kind of microcosm about that, about everyone trying to work out now what to do. And I think as well, I feel that there's often a real sense about a desperation to go back to a sense of normality, whatever that is, because it was so abnormal over the last couple of years that we're craving that, let's go back to how things were. But of course, they weren't going to be back to 2019. It's easy sometimes to see 2019 as this kind of golden age of where everything was perfect, but we all know it wasn't perfect then, and particularly in a way to a lot of the ways that we were learning and teaching and assessing our students. So there's a kind of tension there between this drive to be back to normal, whatever the new normal is, and wanting to kind of not go back to some of the things that happened during the pandemic, but sometimes are forgetting about what's really worked for us during that time. So it does feel quite alien. It does feel a bit of a jungle. A lot of the things that we accepted aren't the same now, even though we're talking about trying to be back in a sense of normality. And so I felt like, well, that I'm a celebrity. I'm an educational developer. I want to get out of here. Feels very appropriate for this. So those of you that aren't familiar with the I'm a celebrity, get me out of here format, basically a load of people get stuck in the jungle, and then they have to take a variety of bush tucker trials to get out of that. I was trying to think of what the same would be a bush tucker trial. I think it would be an academic adversity or a teaching tribulation in terms of how we can get out of this jungle. And I actually think educational developers are probably the best placed people to help universities escape from this chaotic, this is alien, this kind of stressful environment, and to give people the best support, give our academics and students the best support to help them navigate this new normal, whatever that looks like. I know we have a series of challenges and obstacles to overcome, and there is a lot of fear still. I think there's a sense as well of that things change so rapidly and were turbulent for quite a long time that sometimes we feel like that could happen any time now. Why should we do this? Because everything could just change overnight again. So trying to reassure people and provide that foundation of stability about how we can move forward to navigate this new jungle environment of the university is something that educational developers, I think, have got a lot of skills for. So what does the post-COVID university look like? So I think it's quite a challenging environment. And if we just focus on the university, regardless of all the other things that are happening that impact on this, like the cost of living crisis, like the political concerns, like challenges in terms of new government legislation, in terms of freedom of speech, other legislations that are impacting on the university environment, industrial action, the turbulent global situation, it's sometimes hard to find that promise that a lot of us talked about in 2020 when we were saying, now is the moment to really unpick what we're doing. We can really focus on changing student engagement, adapting our curriculum, becoming up to date. There's a lot going on in the wider world, and then we've got the universities in the middle of it, the university jungle. So these are a few things that I thought highlighted, and particularly challenges that we're seeing at City, and I don't think we're alone in this. So the lure of the large lecture, one of my moments of kind of sadness is how we've slingshotted back to 2019 and using the large lecture, despite us having a set of learning and teaching and assessment principles this year, which didn't say you shouldn't do large lectures, but said you need to think about engagement and you need to think about small group teaching. We had more pressure on rooms of over 200 students than anything else. And there's a lot of reason for this. There's one, that sense of students wanting to be back on campus. So we did a lot of work with our students to understand what they wanted. And of course, they'd been sat at home in their bedrooms, isolated from their friends, not engaging in the university life in the same way that do normally. So of course, they said they wanted to be back on campus. I'm less convinced that they want to be back in a room with 200 other students, not really having an engaging experience. So we've got a real battle in terms of trying to persuade academic staff out of the lecture theatre or into a different form of lecture as well. And again, a lot of academics are feeling tired, they're feeling concerned that actually they don't want to just, the lecture on Zoom didn't work, how can we unpick it? And it takes a lot of work to unpick your curriculum again. And they've been doing that on and off for 2 years. So actually, can we just go back to a lecture, they're saying to me? So the law of the large lecture, I think we can do better than that. Not to say that there isn't often a need for a performative element in a course. Of course there is, but actually we need to be really understanding what we're trying to do in that space. And then you've got the timetabling tightrope. So as well as the large lecture, you've also then, we can't fit everyone on campus necessarily. So there's then and we've still got things that need to take place online and students want to take place online. So then we're trying to work out, well, particularly at City, where we've got 80% of our undergraduate students live at home and commute into the university, how do we timetable this? So we've got some things happening online, some things happening on campus. Where can the students take that? How do they get home in between? Can they get home in between? Timetabling tightrope. And actually doing some analysis this week, we found that we're still mainly teaching on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which seems to me like the model when I was at university a very long time ago. So we're trying to think about how we're using our spaces more effectively, how we're engaging students in that and making a timetable that works for them and our staff. And then there's the lost student. So everyone will have seen pictures. There was a Twitter thread this week about students not coming to classes. So they said they wanted to come back to campus. They said they wanted to be taught in person. They wanted to engage in university community. And then where are they? They're not coming to campus, or when they are coming, they're not coming to lectures. They're not engaging. They're not meeting us. They're not turning up to some of the community activities, or their engagement is very sporadic. So where are the students? What's happening with them? Is it because they're working? Is it because they've got to increase their hours working because they're suffering from financial pressures? Are they just not interested anymore? Did they see, is there a sense of optionality around the curriculum that perhaps there wasn't 2 or 3 years ago? Is there a sense of, well, I used to get by with lecture capture, so actually I'm just going to do that now, or I'll get my notes from my friend. So where are our students and where are they learning, and how are they really engaged with this return to campus, this new normal that we're experiencing? Then, even if we do manage to get to be on campus and we're teaching in an engaging way, we might not have the technology to support us. So we've had a problem with getting microphones because there's a global shortage. We've had a problem getting us tech into classrooms because there's a global shortage. And everyone comes, oh, the technology is terrible. It's like if we can't actually get the technology into campus, how do we engage with that? How can we encourage academic staff and students to start to work through this in a different way if they can't then get the technology in the classroom that they need? So, we're trying to go around and have a mic amnesty so that we can get mics back into the classroom. And then when it's there, it's not working. And then poor IT staff are running around. And whose fault is it? Is it states? Is it IT? Is it timetabling? So then you can just see as an academic member of staff, I've spent 2 years online. Now I'm trying to teach in the classroom. The technology is not working. I'm just not going to do it. As I said, we're tired. We've been doing this for a while. Let's not even go to assessment. That is a lovely can of worms, isn't it? So what to say here? So everybody across the sector has suffered from huge issues around student academic misconduct over the last 2 years, particularly last year, whereas we flip-flopped between different modes of assessment and not always updated it in the same way. We've seen a real desire to move back to on-campus exams. Our students feeling quite mixed about that. Some of them have not had exams at school. Some of them have now had exams at school. How do we support them through this process? Then there's again a sense of as well that support that students needed, particularly when we suspended assessment regulations and changed our assessment regulations during COVID. How can we support those students through who perhaps might have identified earlier with some problems and that they were struggling with their curriculum? Now they're getting into their third year. How can we support them with that? How can we then engage them if they're feeling lost and support them through that stress and support their mental health and well-being and connection to the university, and provide them with an assessment that is authentic? And then lastly, terribly bleak. It will get better. Lastly, we've got staff that are feeling a bit cast away. So we've all started to think about hybrid working. There was a lot of talking about 2020, 2021 about how we would never all be back on campus all the time, that we would always now be working in a hybrid way. I think a lot of us have seen now a big shift back to being on campus again, particularly because if we're saying that's what our students want, we've got to be there to support them. We want to be part of this bigger community. But what does that look like, and how does it work? And is there enough office space for us? And how can we run our meetings in a hybrid format, or our teaching in a hybrid format, and engage people? How do we have a sense of flexibility, perhaps when there isn't technology around to support us? Or is it a success? How are we making sure that people feel like they can work in a way that supports their mental health and well-being, as well as meeting the needs of our students and the wider university community? So it feels like there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of good stuff happening, but it feels like there's a lot of big challenges in lots of different areas that are all connected, that are all coming together. And the learning and teaching activities that we're doing are really at the sharp end of this. They're really at that point where you can see all these challenges coming together. So can the OFS save us? I had to bring this in because the OFS have recently done their blended learning review, which actually I think is very helpful. I don't think the OSF can necessarily save us 100%, but it's interesting how the shift is. One of the challenges that we've often faced, particularly working in educational development and educational technology over the last year or so, is a very negative narrative coming out of government and policymakers about the value of online learning and about the value of online resources, and quite a binary in terms of how online provision is seen in relation to face-to-face. And I think we all have a job to really educate people, and particularly beyond the sector, parents and students, about what online learning what blended learning now really looks like, and what it means when it's done really well, and how it can really support our students to have a much better experience, how it can enable them to engage much more flexibly, how it can really meet a number of different requirements in terms of learning preferences and EDI requirements. All sorts of benefits it can do. It can enable the staff to tap into, expertise across the globe. It's not about, as I said in a meeting the other day, it's not about a bad lecture capture where you can only see half the academic's head as they're talking to the room. So I think actually here, the OFS guidelines on blended learning are really, really helpful, and actually provide us with a nice driver to be able to say to staff, look, this much more nuanced impact about an understanding of where blended learning can work could be really helpful in terms of moving that dialogue on. So they're not going to save us 100%, but they are, I think, in this respect, working with us. I think it's educational developers that will save us. I think educational developers are the heroes of the jungle. And I would say not all heroes wear capes, but if you want to wear capes as an educational developer, you absolutely should do, because you have the skills to really help us navigate this quite hostile environment. So I'm going to talk through a few ways in which I think educational developers are our heroes here. So we need to own it. We have all the tools as educational developers that we need to support staff and students with the university jungle. So we've got our toolkits. We love toolkits as educational developers. We've got loads of them. And some of them we created during the pandemic. I'm speaking for City. We've got a whole ton of toolkits on assessment, on how to teach large groups, how to engage personal tutors. We've got all of them. They're probably sitting in beautiful online resources where we've publicised to our staff through newsletters. How are we actually using them on a regular basis to get out there with staff and students and really get them to engage in what we're doing? We have the toolkits, we have the tools, we need to get out there and use them. How can we really then support that on a day-to-day basis with academic staff in terms of reflection and adaptation and what they're learning, and using those as a way to handhold them into feeling more comfort and safety in this quite challenging environment that we find ourselves in? And related to that is design. So I know Colin's going to talk about this later, but getting into our gear, we really love to talk about design. We love to sit down with people and sit through and talk through their program and give them some models and work through it. And let's think about how we can do that in a very practical way with staff. So I think, and we need to think about how we're putting that into practice. And I often sometimes think that as educational developers, we can't go for broke. So we think about, well, you need to redesign your whole curriculum in relation to this, which makes a lot of academics run for the hills in terms of what they want. They want something that's quick fixes. And that's where those toolkits and those top tips and things that we can do. How can you redesign this session? Okay, so you are teaching to 200 students. Fine. How can you make that more engaging? How can you bring in aspects of engagement into that? How can you bring in new ways of learning and thinking? How are you talking to your students? How are you understanding what they're doing? Start simple and work up. And then that can really help support academics engage in this and give them the confidence to try new things. I think that we are really good listeners and show great compassion as educational developers, and those are some of our hidden superpowers. I remember when I was Director of Learning Enhancement and Development at City, that we often talked about ourselves as the kind of the emotional heart of the university. People came to us because they trusted us, that we would sit and listen to them, and often because we sat and listened to them, because that is what we do, that they would open up about all sorts of challenges that they were having in relation to their learning and teaching practice, how intimidated they might feel talking to 200 students, how they didn't like the room that they were in and they felt that it was really impacting on their practice, how they were just given such a massive teaching load this year that they couldn't really think about how to bring in innovative techniques. And that listening compassion that educational developers have, and I've seen it in so many different universities working with educational developers, is so important at this time of real turbulence to give academic staff that confidence. We're not going to judge them because they're still using, on-campus exams and large lecture theatres, that we're going to work with them in a positive way so that we can help them do some of the things that the university and our students are asking for. And that goes to my next point, which is building bridges. I think as educational developers, we are really good at going out and building bridges between different parts of the university. So we're really good at identifying things that are going well and then feeding that back into other people and saying, oh, have you tried about this? Or have you spoken to that person? Or have you gone and talked to our estates department about that? Or how can we put you together? And again, that kind of sense of the third space professional there that works across the university in different ways and builds networks. We love communities of practice. We love networking. We're really good at doing that, and we often have so many ideas from elsewhere that gives us real strength again in terms of supporting academic staff to feel safe and comfortable. And last time, I always think that we show great pragmatism and bravery. So yeah, we are tired as well. It's been a big couple of years for educational developers, let's be honest. And also we feel that uncertainty and we worry about the discomfort, but we can be honest about that and work through that with the people that we are working with. Yeah, it is hard. How can we help you? And that goes back to those superpowers of compassion and listening, which are so important in underpinning all the work that we do. And what will be our prize if we do this? We will be the kings and queens of the jungle. We will navigate. I can't necessarily think that we'll sing like King Julian in Madagascar, but we will be able to support staff to grow and flourish in the work that they're doing across the university. And there's nothing more than an educational developer gets joy at seeing someone change their practice or come back and go, you know, that conversation we had a year ago over coffee where I talked about what the problems I had in my lecture? Well, I tried it and it worked. The joy that we feel in that is that's what makes us getting up every morning. So if you do one thing after today, no matter how tired you're feeling or how like you're feeling like the university jungle is this scary nap place and you want to run away and hide, we've all been there. Remember, you are more important than ever before. Your university needs you. I say, as a senior leader in the university, we desperately need educational developers to come out and support us and challenge us on what we're doing and work through it and say, let's do better. Let's listen to our students. Let's listen to our staff and really build on those last couple of years in a positive way to understand the experiences that we have and how we can grow and learn together. So I think that takes me almost exactly to 20 minutes. So I would just like to say thank you for listening and good luck. And obviously I'll be able to take some questions later.
Thank you, Susannah. That's great. And I'll hand over to Colin now. And then, as I said, we will have some time for questions afterwards.
Okay, thank you. And nice to see you all today. Susannah didn't mention that we actually have psychic powers between us, and so we've designed the sessions so they flow together quite nicely. So yes, I'm going to talk about design and toolkits and so on. So the focus is No Time to Design, which you notice we've got kind of TV themes and film themes. So it's like the James Bond film, No Time to Design. I'm going to look at design. But first of all, I'm going to say that my friend Vishwash Parshur in India was awarded the Marina Ewald Prize this year. And he contacted me and said, can we have a talk because it's got to be online? Now, I don't know whether you know Marina Ewald, but she was the great person that really did a lot of the work behind the Kurt Hahn. And Kurt Hahn was the person that set up Gordonstone School in Scotland and created the Outward Bound kind of movement and so on. But actually, Marina Ewald was the unrecognised person in all of this. And so there's an award each year, and he won the award and did the presentation online. And so I'm going to say to you that what made it quite interesting when I watched it was he had his two children either side with big pieces of cardboard with messages on, and you saw their little hands come up. And so he showed them. He did go on to use PowerPoint, but I just thought that was fantastic. So I have to tell you that I've set myself a little challenge for these 20 minutes, and that is not to use a single PowerPoint slide, because we're all familiar with death by PowerPoint. So I thought, well, I'll see if I can do it. Now, the other thing that would be stretching it too far, here comes the first prop, is I couldn't really try this. Zoom online by keeping your mouth shut is actually quite impossible. So I'm scrapping that. That book's going out the window. I've got plenty of props for you today, so let's see what happens. So I've had plenty of time to worry about design during COVID because I found it very frustrating. I'm really interested in holistic approaches to learning and the fact that students have many capacities to learn. And I like to work with what I call the 7 core capacities, including these. They're really powerful. So I really struggled with Zoom. I even, prop number 2, I even bought myself a little visualizer. And just to make it a little bit more interesting, you know, and then I could move things around and the students would possibly respond. And you notice that movement, by the way, attracts the human brain instantly. The human brain is like an anticipation machine. So I recognized that it was very limited on Zoom. Thank goodness for the chat room. So I'm going to talk to you about the fact that it became such a key thing for me, and it has done really for many years, but I didn't focus on the right words. So I've just published this book. I don't know whether it'll keep still enough for you to see it. So this whole book was written during COVID. There's about 36 practical examples and all the theory to go with the design of learning experiences using the 7 core human capacities. And we all know that things like belonging are coming in now as quite topical in universities, and about time too. We're managing relationships, we're managing the sensory dynamics, we're managing so much social dynamics, social interaction. I think people underestimate what it's actually like to teach. It's a great thing to do, and we have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. And now, just to emphasize how important it is, the word design, just watch this, and I'll try and do it until you get bored. Number 1. Number 2. See the key word? Number 3. See the key word? Number 4. See the key word? How many more would you like me to show you? Here's another one. I've got about 6 more. Isn't it fascinating that in the 21st century, at this point, everybody's writing books on design? So just remember today, the real work, I'm going to show you something at the end, a prop that will make an impact on you. The real work is in the design, and the delivery is a totally different experience if we get the design right. So on that note, I'm going to just now illustrate the creative side of myself. I am quite right-brained. If you don't believe in the right brain, left brain, then we can get some tablets for you. So I'm very right-brained, I'm quite creative. And so I want to just talk to you about a couple of creative digital things that I've worked with. In fact, yesterday I was working with a group of lecturers from Africa and Finland who came to Sheffield. And we tried one of these out, and I promised them by 9 o'clock this morning, they would have their co-production sent to them by email, and I managed to do it this morning. So here we go. The first thing is to talk about the problem of speaking and teaching with your mouth. And it goes something like this. So here's another prop. I love the fact that we can learn so much from museums, and this essentially is a museum. It's just that it's called the Harry Potter Studios. And so here what we see is this wonderful thing by one of the choreographers, cinematographer, that says what starts off as words on a page become the images that we conjure up. Now, those words that drift out of our mouth are exactly the same, and they're problematic. The reason that when we teach it's problematic is we have this problem of the error of imagination. How many of you have read a book and then said, do you know the film was not like the book at all? So when we teach, it's the same error of imagination. Because our words come out one word at a time, it's very linear. So our students are trying to think what we're trying to think. And there's no, I would show you a slide, but then I've decided not to, that shows this problem in a better way. So what I've done here is to help you. I'm going to introduce you to a design trick. And the design trick is this. It's called conceptual metaphor theory. So when you speak, listen more carefully these days to these key words that drift out of your mouth, represented in this case by these knots in my string. These knots in my string are words that we use that actually help the brain, to use Susannah's term, navigate. So navigation is a really important theme for helping students, to help them navigate their learning in many different ways. So, for example, your mother might have said to you, you need to put that behind you. You need to, you have your whole life in front of you. I work in higher education, you might say. I work in further education. And as we go on, we begin to realize that these words are what we call spatial or bodily words. I feel really down about, we have intimacy is represented by closeness. We even use the term time when we teach students time management. It depends how you spend your time. So I often show them my credit card, when the bill comes in, it's expensive. So listen carefully to your language, because your language will help you to design things. Primary school teachers are really good at this. They start with sweets and they teach them sharing. And then sharing becomes division, dividing. And they don't use sweets, they use concrete blocks. And then they learn to basically remember in the cognitive form only. So there's a symbol, a symbolic. And my wife, a primary teacher, teaches them that that sign or that symbol of division is one sweet for you and one sweet for you. And at nearly 70 years of age, I've never, ever heard that before. And I wished my maths teacher would have told me that. Multiplication is lots of. So the linguistic analysis really helps you with design, because it gives you clues as to how to support the student navigation of that complex stuff. So, now talking about navigation, here's the first thing that I generated during COVID, is a way of helping the students navigate. I'm doing some research on this at the moment, navigate their module. And I realized talking to the students that, they didn't even know almost what seminar they'd come into. They've just come out of one seminar, they've gone into another, they can't remember what they're supposed to be doing, they can't remember what they were doing last week. And so I designed something that is perhaps the most iconic and powerful design that's ever been done by Harry Beck in the 1930s. It's in every city all over the world, and it's called the London Underground Map. So what we have now is something I've created that really helps the students to see where they've come from. They have forms of help, which is an icon for everything they get taught. They have some text, and if you press on the station, week number 6 or whatever, you'll see that there's an underline on some of them. They're embedded with audio clips that at the moment I do straight after the seminars, no more than 3 minutes. But increasingly, my philosophy as a professor of experiential learning one of the main philosophies that I teach and preach is let the students do the work. So my plan is that they will do the audios, and there'll be groups actually given a number, so they will have to do a 3-minute audio for every station. And what I'm finding is, because the icon at the top, which is "You Are Here," which is on every map, is very powerful, I move it every week in the seminars and the lectures to say "You are here." And the research is showing already that they find that extremely useful. But how simple, how simple. And would you believe it, 70 years on from Harry Beck designing this, the buses still haven't got it. People get on the bus and I hear them say to the driver, "Could you tell me when we get to the hospital, the children's hospital?" Well, if they had what they have on the trains and some of the advanced trams and trains, for example, the MRT and the MTR in Singapore and Hong Kong, they actually light up so you can follow them. You know you've got 4 stations and you get off. You know on the London Underground, you go on the blue train, 4 stops and you're at Buckingham Palace. Why is it that in the 21st century, I've only just woken up to helping the students navigate their learning experience? What a breakthrough. I loved it. I love it. And I'm still working on it. The students tell me they'd like this and they'd like that. And they'd like it on a smartphone. But I tell you what, we've had a computer student, and unfortunately, he's just been diagnosed with a terminal brain cancer. He's actually been trying to do this on a smartphone. He's done a fantastic job, but boy, is it difficult to create that. So here, in this case, the good old digital PowerPoint slide with hyperlinks is working quite well at the moment, but our plan is to turn it into a digital smartphone experience. What they're saying to me is they never look at their module handbooks very often, except maybe to check whether when the assignment's coming in. And of course, on this one, they can see they're getting closer. This is the whole, it's a goal path design. It's a classic design. And I use these on my masterclasses. This is a more complex version of the masterclasses I do for lecturers all over the world. And this is the one-day program. And we do the same thing. And I'm going to now introduce you to something that I tried in Singapore recently that I've done with students as well. It's the second breakthrough. But first of all, I'm going to mention the use of speech recognition. So I was in the London Museum doing a big keynote a few years ago. And I just happened to mention that I've always struggled with writing. I don't think we're honest with our students about our struggle with writing. I think they have the impression that we are brilliant writers and we just do it like that. The truth is, I think I've destroyed a couple of rainforests with all the printing I've done, first try, second try, third try, fourth try. The polishing that goes on for me is a struggle. So speech recognition, this woman came up to me after the speech and said, "Have you tried speech recognition?" I said, I tried it years ago and it was tedious. No, she said, try it. 96, 97% accurate out of the box. And one of the things I do in some speeches now is I stand at the front and I say this, and I cross my fingers behind my back. They can't see that, but I'm hoping it works. And then I say, Professor Ron Barnett says the wider project of higher education is not the development of the ontological self, full stop, comma, but rather the development of the ontological self. So it's not the development of the epistemological self, it's the development of the ontological self. Then when I've said that sentence and I say full stop at the end, I say make that red and it all turns red. And then I say italicize that. And the audience often say, "Wow, where'd you get this from?" Speech recognition, it's digital, and it made me realize that we can do all sorts of things with speech recognition. So I've tried, for example, teaching writing skills. It's a bit like I was once asked to go and work with some women who were doing a foundation degree in hair and beauty. Speech recognition, I realized that I could help my students with crafting writing. So you can do it live with the group to co-create excellent conclusions and great introductions. And actually, I've found that if you're willing to take that risk of doing it live, it has a massive impact on the students. They realize that we won't get it right first time and we can make it sound better and polish it and work on it. Maybe even use thesaurus and find a better word that, your tutor will give you an extra couple of marks for that because it sounds quite impressive. So speech recognition is great for live work. because it actually types it all there in front of the students, and they've helped to create it. I simply say, go to sleep, and the speech recognition shuts off. We have a conversation, we practice what we want to say, then I say, wake up, and then I say it on behalf of the students, and it types it for us. The next thing I want to say is I went on to look at that, and in Singapore with a group of teachers, lecturers, and facilitators recently, I said, are you up for an experiment? And they said, yes. So they were on the masterclass, and they had 10 experiences. They'd had 10 experiences. So I simply got a piece of rope. I had 10 big laminated cards, and I created 10 stations. I said, right, this is the experiment. We're going to review and reflect on the whole day. I'm really interested to know what you've learned. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes per station to have a conversation together. And then what I'm going to do, and just see if I can find it here. It might be on my desk, it might not be. But I have quite an expensive Edirol tape recorder. And with the Edirol recorder, I simply, when they were ready, gave the first group the Edirol recorder, pressed it on record. They had a conversation. They passed it on to the next group at number 2 experience. So it went on, and I said to them, I promise you that by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, you will have your own booklet that you have created of all the major learning points of the 10 experiences that you've had today on my design masterclass. And would you believe it, as I said before this conference this morning, the people from Finland and South Africa, they had 3 hours with me, and they created their own booklet of, and the way I do it is I put the Edirol recorder plug in here, straight from the recorder. I have my speech recognition headphones in my other ear, and have the microphone here. I listen to what they're saying, and I simply speak it, and it types it for me. I then edit it and polish it, give them a few pointers, suggest a few things in brackets that they might have missed. And by 9 o'clock this morning, the delegation from Africa and Finland, they had their own booklet. So this co-creation of materials, we talk a lot about co-creation. We talk a lot about, giving the students responsibility, engaging them. They can't help but engage. There's a good deal, this, isn't it? I'm going to help you get better marks in your assignment. I'm going to help you to craft that brilliant conclusion. And then at the end of the module, I'm going to give you, I said there were audio clips along the way. Then they end up creating their own, review or reflection on the key learning of all those 12 weeks that they've had of seminars or whatever. So I stumbled across this. I hope you like those couple of examples. In fact, there's really 2 or 3 secretly squeezed together there. So I'm going to finish with my last comment is this. So I've got a nice little prop. This is my prop. I wrote a paper, and this is the title of the paper. I think you can read it from there if I hold it still. Learning experience design. It all starts at the drawing board, and then only then moves into the classroom. Now, if you spend enough time on good design, there were several women lecturers in Malaysia a few years ago, and these Muslim women said to me, I asked them to tell me what they saw during the couple of days working on the masterclass, and they said, well, you don't seem to do very much. And at first I thought, what do you mean I don't do very much? And then I realized that actually what they went on to say is, it was amazing because you didn't seem to do very much, but we learned so much and we enjoyed the whole thing. We can't believe how fast it's gone. And I realized that the hard work is in the design, not the delivery. So this is what this stands for. It's time to throw away the old light bulb. Teaching with your mouth shut is a great idea, but don't do it all the time, else the students will not feel like they're getting value for money. They want your expertise. But this is 97% heat, 3% light. So finally, we've actually had a massive breakthrough, LED, learning experience design. The teachers are no longer exhausted because all they're doing is teach, teach, teach. We're all exhausted. Stop teaching. Let the students do the work. Sit down and think of ways to get them to do the flipping work. That's what they need to do because then they're engaged. So throw this away. This one lasts longer, memory. The students remember it, and I bet you any money you'll remember these light bulbs tomorrow and the day after. Even a simple prop on Zoom and gloom. So let's throw this away and try and be more creative in the design room and try new things, and maybe even come on one of my masterclasses like all these people from all over the world and learn the secrets of good design. Become an architect of learning. Thank you very much.